All right, we'll go ahead and get started. It's 1:50. Hi, everybody. I hope you're having a great conference experience so far. This is so weird to do it virtually. In a non-pandemic situation, it would have been great to meet you all in person, but suffice this to meet you all virtually, and really humbled to be part of this wonderful group of talented, intelligent, and diverse women. And I'm really excited to speak with you today about my journey. I look forward to connecting with you all virtually, so feel free to ping me on LinkedIn and I'll share that information at the end as well. Let's see if this works. Oh boy. All right, so quick introduction. My name is Tonima Khan. I'm currently an account executive at Slack. I work with companies here in the Silicon Valley. I spent 9 years prior to joining Slack. I've been in this current role for about a little over a year. And prior to joining Slack, I was at Oracle for 9 years, also selling into predominantly the Silicon Valley. And overall, I've spent 15 years in technology sales. The focus of the discussion today really is sharing my experience with you selling technology, selling as a woman, and sharing and leveraging how I've leveraged my network to grow both professionally and personally. So I wanted to start with a story set against the backdrop of the Silicon Valley, and not the HBO show, but the actual geographic location. In the early 1980s, a young engineer from Bangladesh had just graduated from his master's program, and he began his career and first job at Intel. Very soon after he joined, Intel helped sponsor his family, and he was joined by his wife and his young daughter. He was really excited that his family was here now, that they were all together and they could finally put down roots in California. And he was also excited to instill that passion for technology that he had in his daughter. I'm sure it's no surprise that daughter is me, shocker. Growing up against the backdrop of Silicon Valley has really helped shape who I am as a person. I spent my childhood playing with semiconductor chips that my dad would bring home from work alongside my Legos, spent weekends running around Stanford bookstore or going with my dad to his office on the weekends at Fairchild to give my mom a break, or accompanying him to National Semiconductor and Intel Take Your Kids to Work days. And really seeing the evolution and growing up with the Valley, and the evolution from hardware to software, seeing the birth of companies like Yahoo, Google, Facebook has really changed my perception of the world. And like I said, has shaped who I am as a person. And as the daughter of South Asian immigrants, I was strongly, quote unquote, encouraged to study engineering. So when I started as a freshman at UC Berkeley, it was with that intent to study computer science. But I quickly realized that that wasn't the right fit for me. I have tremendous respect and admiration for builders, creators, and makers, but that really didn't motivate me. I love technology, but I also love people. I love meeting people. I love learning about people. I love hearing their stories. I love to travel to learn about other cultures and the people there. And I wasn't really getting that in the lab writing code. My sophomore year, I took some classes in psychology, linguistics, neuroscience, and philosophy, and I became fascinated by the human brain, how we think, how we act, how we speak, why we do the things we do. And very soon after that, I took a class in artificial intelligence, and that really changed my mindset. It opened my eyes, and I found my calling. I changed my major, and I eventually graduated with a degree in cognitive science. which was the perfect blend of my two passions, technology and people. Understanding the brain and modeling it in technology, or more real world for me, how technology helps people. And that's really what's driven my career in sales as well, particularly working with companies in the Silicon Valley. And I see all your great stuff in the chat. I will respond at the end to some of those. Now, I don't know anyone that grows up, at least in my network, I haven't come across anyone that grew up when they were little, thought or would say that when I grew up, I want to be a salesperson. It definitely wasn't something that I said. I actually started my career in marketing at a startup here in the Valley as well. And in creating these marketing campaigns and developing these lead generation programs, I found that I really enjoyed speaking with people, and I had an ear for listening and identifying problems that they had and tying it back to how we could potentially help them with our solution and passing leads to sales. So I essentially fell into sales. And at the time when I thought about salespeople, I had this stereotype in my mind, kind of a picture of Alec Baldwin, if you will, for the salespeople that are listening from that movie, Always Be Closing, right? Really aggressive, really loud, really extroverted, typically male, or like Leonardo DiCaprio from The Wolf of Wall Street, right? Again, aggressive, in your face, usually white, typically male, and that definitely wasn't me. Sadly, although women make up over half of the college-educated workforce, we represent less than a third of B2B sales jobs. And unfortunately, that was my experience as well. In my first 3 sales roles, I was the only female on those teams. And so I quickly realized that in order to survive, to sell, to be successful, I had to be true to myself and find my own voice and use my strengths to do that well. And I want to highlight a couple of the ways that I was able to channel my authentic self in doing so. And it really comes down to these 3 things, which I will dive into more detail, but listening to connect the dots, customer focus, and effective communication. So listening to connect the dots. The world has changed dramatically in the last few years, in the last few decades, in fact, especially with the advent of the digital and information age. Customers have they have access to a ton of information. Our lives have changed. The way we work has changed. The way we interact with each other has changed. And customers, again, like I said, are no different. They're digitally savvy. They have access to a ton of information, and they expect their sales rep to not only understand their business, but be able to listen, to understand the industry, to share what they've seen with other customers, to speak to products and trends, and really collaborate together and work to build a point of view and help shape a solution with them that helps them specifically. You need to be able to understand a customer's challenges. You have to understand what they're trying to solve. You have to really walk in their shoes. In order to do that, you really have to take the time to listen. My dad used to have the saying when we were growing up, it was, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And that's always stuck with me throughout my sales career. It's really around the importance of listening, right? Taking the time to pause, listen to what your customer's saying, understanding their problems, empathizing, and being able to connect that back to how you're trying to help them has really exemplified my experience and helped me build deeper connections. So That's the first way to being your authentic self. And that's something that I've done really well, and I've used it to my advantage, is just being really able to listen to a customer. And that brings me to the next point, which is customer focus. I started today talking about how growing up in the Silicon Valley shaped my perspective. And I've been fortunate to sell into tech companies the majority of my career. I mentioned to you that my dad's an engineer, I married an engineer, and that actually has helped me understand my customers and their psyche better. And I realize not everyone's selling into technology, and not everyone has engineers in their family if they are selling into technology. But that's something that's specific to my experience and my authentic self. And that comes through in my just role as a salesperson. At the end of the day, no matter what you're selling, people are buying from people. And the people that we're selling to, they're talking to hundreds of different people and vendors every day. How do you set yourself apart? How do you stick out? How do you make a meaningful impact on or impression on that customer? And it comes down to having that customer focus. I'm not that typical salesperson. I'm not Alec Baldwin. I'm not Leonardo DiCaprio from The Wolf of Wall Street. I know you can't see me, but I'm a pretty petite brown girl, and I'm not usually the loudest person in the room. So how was I able to channel my authentic self to set myself apart and focus on the customer? And I had to find ways to do that by connecting to the customers in a way that was natural and authentic to me. Talking about travel, talking about kids, talking about food, about books, and really connecting with them at that human level has helped me build that trust and cultivate meaningful relationships throughout the last 15 years. As Anthony Bourdain said, or used to say, sharing a meal together, whether it's lunch, coffee, what have you, really helps deepen any relationship and take it to that next level. It gives you an opportunity to not just talk shop and listen to what your customer is saying, but also really getting to know the person as an individual, not just as a customer, but as a person, beyond their role, beyond their title, and really help build lasting relationships and connections. Another funny memory that I have, a fond memory, is one from when I was in one of my roles at Oracle, and my manager had joined me in this sales meeting. And the vendor started the meeting with a hug, by hugging me, and ended the meeting with a hug. And my manager was floored. He was flabbergasted. He'd never seen that before. And he made the comment, "I've never seen a customer hug a vendor." And that really, I chuckle now, and I don't go around hugging everyone, don't get me wrong, but when you feel a meaningful connection with people, and that's something that's unique to me, I hug them. That's how we connect at that human level. And that's something that, it's a funny story, but it's something that I do and has come to be part of who I am, both as a person and as a salesperson. It's really helped me. You want to be able to listen to the customer, understand their business, understand their challenges, and really work with them, collaborate with them, and understand them as people to connect and become that trusted advisor and build a solution together. So again, I just want to reiterate the importance of customer focus, both at the customer level, but also at the human level. Another thing that's important in channeling your authentic self is effective communication. As a woman, not necessarily being the loudest person, not necessarily having the loudest voice, but having a strong voice, ensuring that my voice is still heard. I know you guys can't see my full frame, but like I mentioned, I'm a pretty petite person. I'm 5 foot tall, pretty small brown girl. And my voice is normally not that loud. One of my most favorite TED Talks is Amy Cuddy's on body language. and how it shapes people's perception of you. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it, and I can share it with you in the chat afterwards. She talks about the importance of first impressions and how studies show that men and women take up space differently in meetings. Let's just focus on the professional aspect. Typically in meetings, men will sprawl out, their hands go over the seat, their legs sprawl out, they're taking up space. On the flip side, women, we tend to make ourselves smaller. We are crossing our arms, we're crossing our legs. We're just, again, trying to make ourselves smaller and take up little space. For someone like me, who's already small, I don't want to take up less space. I want to embrace my space. And just simple changes and tweaks in your posture, in eye contact, in projecting your voice, using inflections in your voice, slowing down to have impact, not only helps change people's perception of you, but it builds confidence and it allows you to communicate more clearly and more effectively. You don't need to be the loudest person in the room, but the person with a strong, consistent, supportive voice focused on the customer has certainly helped me in channeling my authentic self. And that brings me to another funny story on selling as a woman, and specifically as a working mom. I have 2 young kids, and several years ago during Oracle Open World, which is Oracle's huge customer conference, it's like the show of the year in San Francisco, and it's really an opportunity where we get, salespeople and account teams, we get to meet with the customer and prospects and progress and close deals. And I was 9 months pregnant. And I actually, even though being 9 months pregnant, I had an active deal in flight that I was really looking to close before I went into labor and had my baby. And as it turns out, the CIO of the customer where I was trying to close the deal was in San Francisco just for 1 day. And I really didn't want to miss the opportunity to meet with him, even though I was not supposed to be driving or leaving the home. So my husband drove me. He drove me to San Francisco. He drove me to the meeting and he waited outside while the entire meeting took place. The CIO was definitely surprised to see a very pregnant Tonima, but he was appreciative that I had shown up, and my VP and team were freaked out. They wanted to make sure that my husband was nearby just in case that I went into labor. And of course, for liability, and I'm joking, obviously they cared about my well-being too. But funnily enough, 3 days later, I actually did go into labor and the deal was signed on my way to the hospital. Which is no joke. My colleague, whose name is Jared, who was covering for me who was going to cover for me during maternity leave, he made the call. We were trying to get the deal literally signed in those last few minutes. And so he called my cell phone, and I'll never forget, my husband picked up. And we were driving on the 101 on the way to Palo Alto. And my husband's like, she can't talk right now. She's in labor. And Jared was completely freaked out and apologetic. He's like, I'm so sorry. And he was really eager to hang up the phone. And I know that's a really funny story. And I'm not advocating at all that you meet with customers or close deals while in labor. But it's a funny, real story. And it's a real example of life as a working mom with a demanding job. And it just goes back to being your authentic self. We are really lucky nowadays that we don't live in a time anymore where we have to hide that part about ourselves and pretend that we're a working mom. Embrace it. That's a part of who I am. I'm a mom. I'm a woman, and I work. And it's hard. It's not easy, but that's part of my identity. And it gives me that passion, that persistence, and that grit. And it really helps, again, channel my authentic self when I'm selling to people. Sorry, still having these technical difficulties. But that's a really good segue into the importance of diversity, which specifically of diversity in leadership and cultivating relationships both externally as well as internally. There's tons of research, that's a whole other talk, but there's tons of research on why diversity is important to business, why it's good for business. And let's be real, it's just the right thing to do. But I wanted to share a personal story again to illustrate this point of why it's been important to me in channeling my authentic self and in my experience. My first pregnancy, I was at a startup, and sadly, I only got 8 unpaid weeks of maternity leave. And as a first-time mom, it was incredibly challenging and not a pleasant experience. So after I came back from maternity leave with my second child, I was at Oracle. And again, sadly, I was the only female on my team at the time. And despite having blown out my number that year, despite being the #1 rep in the entire West and closing a deal literally while I was in labor, when I came back from maternity leave, I was met with a lot of suspicion, a lot of questions, and constantly having to defend myself in my work, hiding the fact that I needed to pump every few hours. There's just a lack of empathy, a lack of understanding, and it wasn't good. And that's where I really learned the importance of advocating for yourself, and really communicating your work, not just assuming people know what you're doing and what you're contributing, but really being able to articulate, communicate, and share the contributions that you're making to work and the team, both to your immediate management, to the broader team, and your extended virtual team, as well as seeking out sponsors. So people that will support you and advocate for you as well. I've been incredibly fortunate, actually, to have some amazing mentors who have really helped guide me and help me grow along the way throughout my career. And I've also been lucky to have sponsors who have supported and advocated for me to leadership. And in fact, that story does have a silver lining. One of those mentors and sponsors helped me get promoted when I came back from maternity leave and had that bad experience. And actually, I was able to get promoted into the field, into a completely different org and team within Oracle. So it ended up well. But again, going back to just being authentic and using your voice to communicate effectively is just as important, not only externally to who you sell to, but also internally to your team and your company. So finding and amplifying my voice, advocating for myself, leveraging my network has really helped me build my authentic brand and reputation. And this brand of really listening to the customer, really seeking to understand, listening to understand their challenges, their pains, walking in their feet, really working with them collaboratively to build a solution that works for them and is unique to them, not just trying to close the deal for the sake of closing the deal, but really doing what's right for the customer as well as for the company and for myself. Having that hyper customer focus, having that strong voice, and just using my authentic self as a woman, as a mom, as the daughter of an engineer, as the wife of an engineer, having the whole experience of growing up in the Silicon Valley and selling into the Silicon Valley now. It really helped me build a brand for myself, and a reputation in the industry of my authentic self. And that brought me to my role at Slack. When Slack reached out to me, I wasn't looking to leave Oracle at the time. And the reason they had reached out is because I had built this brand of being authentic, of having that customer focus, of listening, of channeling my experience to do what's right for the customer. And I built up this brand again of not being that typical salesperson, not being that Leo, not being that Alec Baldwin. And that's what companies like Slack, which is at the foundation of our product, is helping and collaborating and connecting with people. And that's the type of salesperson that they were looking for. Someone that would not only channel their authentic self, but honor the company values and emulate them in day-to-day life. And, you know, the journey doesn't end here. You need to continually learn to grow and evolve. It's a picture of one of my other favorite books. It's Grit by Angela Duckworth. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend that as well. And you know, it's just a continuation of that journey, continuing to evolve, continuing to learn, continuing to grow, continuing to leverage those networks to just be your better self and sell more, and to do it with passion, perseverance, and grit. So I hope that's all I had in the form of slides, but I hope that will help. My story will help you guys, the rest of you, in your journeys as well. I wanted to thank everyone again for taking the time so much to join this session. And I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. So please feel free to ping me there. I see there's some activity in the chat. So I think we have time for questions if you guys wanted to. Thank you, Akhilesh. If you guys wanted to chime in there, happy to answer some questions, chat, and connect. But thank you. Let's see. TED speaker, yep, I will share that. Maria? Type the name of the author. Sure, it's Angela Duckworth. Duckworth. I'm glad that resonated, Philippa. What advice would you give? So Kim has a question on what advice would you give to someone who's transitioning to tech sales from consulting? Are you consulting in technology sales or just consulting in general? I think irrespective, a lot of the same things ring true. When you're consulting, you're also, it's very similar, I would say. You're really working to become a student of a customer's business, right? And really understanding their business, their pain points, their challenges, and tying a solution back to them. I think it's more holistic, right? You don't have to recommend specific solutions, but I think that translates really well into technology sales as well. It's a similar format or similar formula, but you would, instead of having a more holistic approach, you would focus on one aspect of one solution, so to speak. I think if that makes sense. Thank you, Nabiha. Cultivate relationships. Yep, that is correct, Adaku. Okay, Furkan has a question. I agree with you. We do need more authentic people in today's world. Did you ever come into a situation that you had to make a choice between your personal values and your work? If so, how did you manage it? That is a great question. I would say I go back to just being a mom and using that as an example because it's very personal and they're my number one priority, my children. But my career is also important. And I don't think those things need to conflict. And I've always, especially after that second pregnancy, after my daughter was born, it was really important to me to not miss out on key moments and key milestones of their childhood. So it was really important for me to have flexible work. and to set my own hours. And I think that's easier to do or more accommodating in a sales role, just because, you know, we're accountable, we have a number over our heads, and it's really about, if you get the work done, you get it done. If you don't get it done, you're not going to sell. So we have that responsibility and that drive to continually be focused on our business. And I think that affords us that flexibility to create more flexible working hours. So I really advocated and made a case to my management at the time when both my kids were young, they're older now, to have more remote working options, so flexible working options. So I hope that answers your question, but that was definitely a way that I didn't necessarily make a choice between my personal values and my work. I was able to blend them and come out with a solution that allowed me to both spend time at home with my kids while also focusing on my work by having that flexible work, remote engagement or arrangement. What moments have highlighted your journey to where you are, Jorge? Lots of different ones, I would say. I think I learned something new from every customer that I've interacted with. And just going back to the importance of networking and cultivating relationships, one of the first deals that I did at Slack was with a customer that I had sold to while I was at Oracle. And so when I had made the switch to Slack, I gave them a call and let them know I was at Slack, and really just built on that existing relationship to expand the partnership. So that was something that was really meaningful to me. But a lot of my customers, I still get their Christmas cards. I'm still in touch with them. And I would say, like how I started my talk, I love meeting people and meeting with them, not just to expand my Rolodex, but really getting to know them and their stories as people. And I would say that has been one of the biggest highlights of just my journey in my career. Tips on finding a mentor and sponsor. I would seek out folks that have, you know, it could be within your immediate team. It doesn't even necessarily need to be in your immediate team. A manager is a great place to start. If, you know, typically managers, they hired you for a reason. They believe in you. They have confidence in you. And I think starting there to ask them to help guide you and help you grow is part of a role as a leader and as a manager. So that's a great place to start. I found also just within my extended virtual team is where I found, a lot of mentors and sponsors. It's people you work with on a daily basis that aren't maybe on your immediate team, but that you connect with outside of your role. I would just reach out. I found that, you know, and it's awkward. You don't usually just say, hey, can you be my mentor? It's more of a natural, organic process where you've built that relationship and really just seek them out to say, hey, I'd love your insight on this, or here's what I'm thinking about. What do you think? What input do you have? I appreciate your feedback. And it happens more in if it happens more in that natural iterative process, I think it's just easier and more meaningful. So hopefully that answers your question, Karina. Thanks, Priyanka. Debbie's question, have you found social media a good way to connect to prospects, and what has been most successful for you? Yes, 1000%. Absolutely. Like I said, we're selling in the digital age, and you can't just go around. I mean, you could now. I wouldn't recommend it with the pandemic. You can't just show up at a customer site, although that is something that we still tend to do when it's safe to do so. But social media is a huge aspect of selling and connecting with people these days and prospects. I would say LinkedIn has been the most successful and the most meaningful one for me. Sales Navigator is a great one for the sales folks. To connect with people and build those meaningful connections. Usually when we reach out, just general rule of thumb is it's multiple reach outs, right? You want to reach out via email, People don't usually respond to phone calls anymore, but you still, of course, want to try and call them if they have a landline or a cell phone, or if you have access to that. And then following that up with a LinkedIn connection. In-mail is also a great way. So absolutely, social media has been a good way to connect with prospects and sales folk, and just the broader network. Thanks, Saima. Kay has a question. What personal traits helped you to be certain about your sales career path? I think just my curiosity, my natural curiosity to learn about people as well as companies. Just growing up in the Valley, seeing the growth and evolution of these companies, just having a family of technologists has always piqued my curiosity. I'm always interested to learn what they're doing, what these different businesses are doing, kind of where the market's going. So I would definitely say the personal trait of being curious about people, about businesses, has helped me as a salesperson. Have you stopped overthinking about an argument for authenticate decision? How? That's a good question, Priyanka. So I want to make sure I understand correctly. So how do you stop overthinking about an argument? Is that what it is? Is that what you mean? Okay. Overthinking an art. I mean, it's really hard, at least for me, it's really hard to be someone that I'm not. And I think that comes across with people. They know, and I forget who mentioned, but the world needs more authentic people, more authentic leaders, and just more authentic connections nowadays. And I don't think you need to question it anymore. I mean, that's my personal opinion, but just be yourself. What's the worst that could happen, right? You don't make a connection, or that person doesn't want to speak with you. That's the worst thing, the absolute worst thing that can happen. I think you need to take that leap of faith in just being yourself, being confident in being yourself, and just sticking true to who you are. I hope that helps answer the question. Iman has a question about being a mom. How do you deal with housework and your company? That's a really great question. I think it's relevant to anyone, male or female, who work in demanding careers. And I think we're still learning about that. I think it's all about delegating. I'm trying to learn now that we're all sheltered in place and still at home. I've really been trying to teach my kids, both me and my husband, to do more chores around the house. So to divvy up the work, so all of the onus doesn't just fall on me and my spouse. So teaching them about laundry and what have you, and instilling that value in them is something that is really recent and relevant. But other than that, just asking for help. We can't, I really don't think you can do everything, and you can't do everything well. There's going to be times when you need to focus on your work, or you need to focus on your family, and just being able, I think, to juggle all of that. I don't think that mystery's been solved. I don't think we can juggle all of that equally. It's just a continual balancing act where you kind of have to shift the load based on day to day, and based on the situation. Anne has a question. If you're shifting to establish yourself in a new field, do you have any recommendations for steps to do that? That's a really good question. I would certainly, do you know which field you're trying to go into? I assume you have an interest in a particular field. I would talk to people or seek out people and make connections, whether it's on LinkedIn or social media or this platform that we have with the Women Tech Global Conference. Seek out people that are in those roles and in the field that you're looking to go into, and just set up quick chats with them, seek their advice, seek their input, and use that to help you make a decision that makes sense for you. A lot of questions on being a mom and working. Like I said, I don't think there's any silver bullet. It's something I struggle with every day. I'm not going to hide it. I had to lock the room and make my kids watch. They're out of school. I'm making them watch a movie for this while this session is going on, so they don't burst in and disturb you. So I just relay that because it's a challenge that we deal with on the daily. You're welcome, Rachel. It's the truth. So I think just being able to, again, I don't think it's something that you can, I haven't seen anyone. Maybe if you guys know, let me know, because I would definitely like to hear what that silver bullet is. But I think it's just a process, and you need to do what's right for you, and you need to do what's right for your family. And like I said, sometimes, like when it's end of quarter, or if we have a deal, my family knows, and my husband takes the brunt of the childcare and the housework and what have you. And at other times when he's busy, the onus falls on me, and it's a continual balancing act. It's great to have. One of the reasons I haven't left the Silicon Valley is because my family is very close by, and it's really important to have that network. I talked about network in the talk, internally and externally, but also within family, and just that support to help you as you work, as well as be a mother or a parent. Thanks, Sarana. And thank you, Iman. I think we're out of time. So again, really appreciate it. If I wasn't able to answer your question or connect with you, please feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. I'm just going to grab a screenshot of the chat to connect with folks that I didn't get a chance to speak to afterwards. And I look forward to meeting you all virtually, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye.